Good afternoon. I am Andrea Chisholm with the Midday News for this Tuesday, November 29. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. Teachers and students at Clancarthy Primary have begun grief counseling following the death of a 7-year-old boy on the school compound yesterday. Benjamin Bear, a grade 2 student, died after being crushed by a garbage truck which overturned late yesterday afternoon. This morning, representatives from the Education Ministry spoke with stakeholders at the school. Member of Parliament for South East St. Andrew Julian Robinson was also in attendance.
There could have been at least 7 lives lost. The truck was heading straight for the children. It hit the car, which in a way helped and prevented a direct impact. But there were at least 2 students who were no more than a second or 2 away from death. So in the tragedy, we have to give thanks. And obviously, there will be an investigation to determine who is responsible and who is culpable.
You can imagine that today is going to be a very, very difficult day. You have seen the experiences thus far. We have the aunts, 3 aunts of the child. The mother is unable to be here today because of the nature of the situation. But our teachers would have been affected, our principal, our administrators would have been affected, and of course our students. So today we have a full set counseling team headed by our senior education officer for guidance and counseling. We have our social workers on board, and we have our grief team. These persons are trained counselors in the Ministry of Education, and these persons would have been trained in grief management.
Reports are that the garbage truck was started without the driver inside the vehicle. It crashed into a parked taxi and overturned on Benjamin Bear. The leadership of the University of Technology and UTEC's Academic Staff Union are locked in a meeting with officials from the Education Ministry. It's to bring an end to the standoff over retroactive payments which were agreed to in May this year. President of the Staff Union, Liebert Langley, last night confirmed that the parties were still at a stalemate.
There is no change in the situation. The union has not heard from the management, and we've certainly not heard from any of the external entities.
Langley is hoping that stakeholders can agree to critical issues following today's meeting.
Well, we're just hoping that the resolution will be placed on the table and so that we can move forward.
He is, however, adamant that classes at the institution will not resume until UTEC staff receive their money. Mayor of St. Anne's Bay, Michael Belnavis, has scheduled a meeting with the stakeholders, including the police, to address robberies and break-ins affecting Brownstone. Last week, members of the school community recounted their experiences to TVJ News, which included students being robbed of their phones at gunpoint by criminals. According to Mayor Belnavis, crime has been mushrooming because of the breakdown in public order in markets and transport centers. He says eliminating lawlessness from Brownstone must start with retaking public spaces.
It's been a feeder town for a lot of districts in and around in the hills of St. Anne. And in recent times there's been a spate of robberies and 1 and 2 murders, which is very unusual and very unlike Brownstone and the wider St. Anne. I'm asking the police to get to the bottom of this and really start moving through the markets and getting the culprits and bringing them to justice. And I'll be meeting with the authorities, including Senior Superintendent Small, to discuss this in no uncertain terms, because this cannot continue to happen. The taxi men in the parish, the bus drivers in the parish, need to have a certain level of decorum, the vendors.
National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang is again defending his administration's use of the states of emergency to tackle crime. Dr. Chang, who was addressing members of the business community and other stakeholders in Manchester, argued that the SOEs are critical in reducing the murder rate.
It impacts on business but it's one of those conflict of interest that sometimes frightening. Everybody's, a state of emergency is what it says, it's an emergency. And if I have 180,000 murders per 100,000 as we had in St. James, that is an emergency in my opinion. People are being killed at the highways and the byways and everywhere. And that's where we were in St. James, 182 murders per 100,000, which made us the most murderous place anywhere in the world.
Crystal Tomlinson has been selected as the caretaker candidate for West Rural St. Andrew. She will represent the PNP in the next general election, which is due by 2021. General Secretary Julian Robinson told our news center that Ms. Tomlinson was the favorable choice among other candidates.
It's an unrecognized seat. The executive of the constituency did an evaluation and an assessment, made a recommendation to me as General Secretary, and I carried it to the executive committee of the party, and the executive committee approved it.
And it's time for a break here on the Midday News, but stay with us. More stories right after these messages. Welcome back, and we're continuing the news. There's a call for emergency repairs to be done on a road in the Augustown area. A section of the roadway on University Road collapsed nearly 2 years ago, but since then the structure has been continuously eroded by rain. The damaged road is now a hazard for students and other residents.
I just saw kids from Hope Valley walking along here as well. And so it is important for me to impress upon the authorities. I'm calling on the NAA. This has to be dealt with much more alacrity than it is being treated right now. What should take them 6 or 7 minutes from the community to the University Hospital of the West Indies, if and when people are in need of emergency care, is now taking them close to 20 minutes and could cost lives in the process. We also know that Augustown has been dealing with violent flare-ups, and so getting persons to hospital as well is taking a much longer time, and probably lives could have been saved, when persons are hurt in gunfire. And because they have to go a much longer route, then obviously it delays the time it would take for them to get medical attention.
In news overseas, Lebanon's Prime Minister has announced he was resigning on Tuesday after the demands of protesters for nearly 2 weeks. More from the CNN.
I call on all Lebanese people to put Lebanese interests and the security of Lebanon and the protection of the civilians of Lebanon before anything else. Regarding all my partners in the political field, our responsibility is how to protect Lebanon and stop any problems reaching Lebanon. Our responsibility is improving the country's economy, and this chance should not be lost. And my resignation, I will hand it in over to the President and all Lebanese people. Positions of power come and go, but the peace and the security of the country and its dignity is more important. And I'm saying nobody is bigger than the country. May Allah protect Lebanon.
Demonstrators across the country have been calling for the Prime Minister to step down, and I could hear them cheering in Martyrs Square just right here by me when that announcement came. But now that it's actually happened, the big question is, what now? Well, CNN's Ben Weidman is live for us in Beirut. Before we talk about what happens next, why now? Why did Saad Hariri decide that he would resign today?
Well, essentially, Becky, he was caught between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, you've had for the last 13 days mass nationwide protests against the government, but more deeply the system of politics that has ruled Lebanon essentially since its independence in the 1940s. This system based upon a sectarian division of power.
And in sports, World Championship gold medalist T.J. Gale says he will take next season more seriously after claiming he wasn't putting in enough work this year. While discussing his own career, the new long jump star also shared some concerns over the amount of work being given to high school athletes. More from TVJ's Daniel Blake.
T.J. Gale created history last month in Doha, Qatar, when he became Jamaica's first world champion in the long jump. The 23-year-old leapt 8.69 meters, which was not only a national record, but the best the world had ever seen in a decade. However, Gail admitted that he was not at 100%.
I was training hard, but not really. I was missing out on really important stuff like abdominals. I'm not Coach Steve Francis hearing this, but the last time I did abdominals like 4 months before the World Championships. And so, the supplements and stuff, like I only, we used to take supplements, but me kind of miss volley.
But now that he has a target on his back, Gail plans to break some of his bad habits to challenge at next year's Olympics in Tokyo.
I have really bad mind control, because if I tell myself I won't do this, I really won't do it. Not can't.
Just not feeling it today.
Yeah, just won't do it today. But I think that will probably change going into training a couple weeks from now. And I have some friends in the MVP track and field club that, really tell jokes and stuff. Say, this year I'm only going to work for my quad and hamstring, next year I'm work for me. Yeah, I'll just run jokes like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I will definitely change.
Gail, during his time at Papine High, was no star at the Issa Boys Championships. He fears that many of the high school standouts will not make it because of the load they experience early on.
I think these young athletes been training way too hard, and at the time of my age or so, they burnout. Or we know you have fast improvers and slow improvers. The fast one will be like chums running so fast, and then when you reach my age, they burn out. And slow ones like me, where I take my time, build up. Like a really good coach could realize if you're a fast or slow improve athlete to work with you or so. And Coach Osborne was one of those coaches to realize that I was a slow improve athlete, but eventually I'll get there. So I said, work with me, come straight up.
Gail, who was speaking on Hits 92 FM's Girls Sports Club recently, is expected to resume training in the next few weeks. Daniel Blake, TVJ Sports.
And that's the Midday News. I'm Andrea Chisholm. Join us at 7 for the Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a wonderful afternoon.